Hello and welcome once again to the Up Your Assets podcast. I'm your host, Ray Ferrara, CFP, and I'm the founder and executive chair of Provise Management Group, LLC, which is an SEC-registered investment advisor with approximately $2 billion of assets under management as of March 31st, 2026. Provise serves about 1,200 clients in over 30 states with offices in Clearwater and Tampa, Florida. Have a written financial plan, in my opinion, is essential. It isn't that you can't be successful without one, but the odds are significantly enhanced with a written financial plan. Like the rabbit said to Alice, if you don't know where you're going, then any path will get you there. It's important to keep in mind that a financial plan is not a one and done. Financial planning is a continuous process that needs to be updated, if for no other reasons than due to the assumptions that are going to change at some point in the future. But the more likely scenario, in a very non-scientific sort of way, is life happens. Babies are born, divorces occur, children grow up, some bounce back home, promotions come along, downsizing at work might be in your future. You win the lottery, you lose a lawsuit, the death of a spouse, etc. At any of these occurrences, the plan needs to get a new look and a refresh. How can you bake life getting in the way to a good financial plan itself? Well, to help us explore these curveballs that life throws at us is Eustache Clerveaux, CFP, CPWA, EA, and CDFA, who is a New York City private wealth advisor, CFP board ambassador, and an adjunct faculty member in finance at NYU's School of Professional Studies. Known for his planning-first approach, he helps high-achieving professionals and families make thoughtful financial decisions during life's major transitions by bringing together cash flow, taxes, investing, insurance, estate planning, and equity compensation planning into a cohesive long-term plan. He has been featured in Market Watch, CNBC, Think Advisor, Financial Planning, and CFP Board's Let'sMakeAPlan.org. He holds an MBA from Iona University and a BA from Purchase College, State University of New York. Eustache and I met for the first time after I read an article that he penned for CFP Board about how to handle surprises and transitions, and I thought that it would be a good idea to share it with the Up Your Assets podcast family. Eustache, welcome to Up Your Assets.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'm looking forward to it because life does throw a lot of curveballs at us. And so when one of those big life moments is on the horizon, how do you know if your money can keep up? And what is the first financial move someone should consider making?
I always say it, right? Life happen. And before you say yes to any events, or before you spend, sometimes I say before you spend $1 on any milestone, sometimes you need to take a step back, right? And to take a snapshot of where you are, what's going on, and, how much liquidity do you currently have? What are your fixed expenses? Do you currently have some debt as well? But also, what will your income or your spending look like after the change, right? Whether it's a wedding, right? Whether you have new babies as well. And I call it sometime either before and after spending plan. I don't like to call it budget because budget gives you strength to something, but I call it spending plan as well. But you need to have a pictures of after that event to see how it's going to impact your life, your cash flow as well. And, to see how that cash flow is going to support the life that follow after those events as well. So I always say the party is only one day, but, the plan is what gonna help keep, the cash flow and, let your life as well.
So Eustache, you bring up an interesting point. I love it. When we do a plan, obviously one of the first things we have to do beyond taking a look at the net worth statement is look at the income and the outflow. And yes, it sort of is a budget. And gosh, there just seems that everybody hates that word budget. But I like your use of the word, what you called it, spending what?
It's a spending plan.
Spending plan. So it's a budget in disguise. Very clever. I'm gonna borrow that phrase from you on a go forward basis with
Yes.
clients. Well, how much of a cushion is actually enough? Does that number change on whatever it is that you're going through?
Yes, that number change all the time, right? And first, it's depend on who's having that cushions, right? If somebody have a steady, they have a paycheck every week, every 2 weeks. That's different from someone who's already retired or somebody who is a self-employed. That's the first things. And also have life happen, right? So if you have a cushion before you got married, now you got married, or you buying a house, you have a child as well. So you have to update all of those caution as well, right? So the term is normally 3 to 6 months. That's what a lot of people throw out there as well, right? But again, if everybody's depend on your paycheck, maybe you need a little bit more than that as well. Or if you retired, probably you need more than that, 1 or 2 years, because you don't want something to happen and now you are forced to sell your long-term assets. So probably you need 1 or 2 years as well in those cautions. Or if you're an entrepreneur, if you're self-employed, 1 month you might do great, the next 2, 3, 4 months you might not do so great. So 3 to 6 months might not be the best idea for you. Maybe you need to go 6 to 12 months. So it really depends on the individual, and it's also depend on what's going on in your life as well.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, if I have a really stable amount of income coming in, a shorter time period is okay. But on the other hand, if I'm, say, in retirement and I don't have any predictable income, perhaps beyond Social Security, may want to have a little bit more, which I think makes a lot of sense when you consider that the average recession lasts about 10 months. But
Exactly.
the average market that goes down during that period of time lasts a little longer. And so if you've got that bigger cushion, as you mentioned, of 1 to 2 years, plus the dividends and the interest that you're going to earn on your portfolio in the meantime, can sustain you through that downturn. And often I refer to it as insurance. The cost,
That
the
is
premium,
correct.
if you will, is the lost opportunity that you have in that money just sitting in cash. And in today's world of 2026, maybe earning 3.5%, where it could be doing much better in the markets over a long period of time. But there's a cost to give you that comfort. And so I think that's great advice that you give people in retirement, to have a little bit more than perhaps when you're actually in your working years.
Exactly. And sometimes I tell people, think of the caution of the emergency fund like the airbag in your car. You don't think about it every day, right? You know it's there. You don't think about it every day. But when you need it, you want to make sure that it's there, right? But you don't think about it every day. So sometimes you have to think of it like that, right? And it's there to protect you. Hopefully you never use it, but it's there. Don't think about it. So and again, like you said, it really depends on who you are, where you are, and it's individualized. And like you said, it's changed all the time. So
How about, we talked about a person working and then somebody who's retired. Let's drill down just a little bit more. What if I'm a company employee, I'm doing really well, I got a nice income, et cetera, versus, let's say, like you and I, a couple of entrepreneurs, that maybe we're just starting our business. How would you differentiate for those folks as to how much of a cushion they ought to have?
but again, if you work for a company and let's say, as two individual, right? If you can live on your spouse incomes, probably you might need, a lower. Maybe you can be under 3 or 4 months, right? But if you need both incomes to live your life, you might need more like 6 or 7 months as well. But when you start, let's say if you start your business as well, you really need a caution because sometime might take some time before you start seeing, money coming in as well. So you really have to, you know, review your budget and review the spending plan as well. And sometimes I tell people, try to live, once you create that budget, before they even happen, try to live, see if you can live on it for 6 to 12 months to see how it impacts your life. Because you never, you haven't got married before, you never have a kid. And I'm actually going through that, right? So, I have a 5-month-old son. I've never had a baby. Very exciting, very emotional. But now I'm thinking about childcare costs, right? And me and my wife work. We're thinking, should we have someone coming to the house, or should we, have the baby somewhere? And there's a lot of how much it's gonna cost, right? And also college. Now start thinking about college as well, right? So there's a lot of moving part. It's not gonna be perfect, but you need to start thinking before they even happen, and try to see if you can live, on that spending plan as well.
Yeah, interesting. As you were talking, I hearkened back to my early days in business in the 70s. My wife was a school teacher, and it's almost sounds ludicrous, but she was making about $7,600 a year. And somehow, as I was starting into the financial business and spending more money getting the business off the ground than I was bringing in, having to live off of her income,
Yes,
and fortunately we were able to do that. But I've always appreciated her willingness to kind of dial things back for that year and a half as we got started and off and running. And I do a lot of mentoring, et cetera, as I'm sure you do,
yes,
and tell young folks that do want to go into business for themselves is if you don't have at least 1 year in your savings account to 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 spend for your spending plan, for your budget to help you get off the ground, don't even consider doing it until then, because otherwise it can be very bare bones.
exactly. That is, yes, that 1 year, I tell people that as well. At least 1 year. If you can make it 2 years, that's fine as well. Because, yeah, it's a big, leap of faith that you're taking, lending that business. But sometimes, right, it takes some time before people starting to trust you when starting a business as well. And as you know, most business fail within the first 5 years, right? And, it's important to have that cautions. And sometimes sometimes I tell people that's before we talk about investment and all of those, fancy word that they use in Wall Street. You really want to make sure that the stability is there before we start thinking optimizing, or part of your plans as well. So,
So, Ursesh, you talked about, you're living a life you never lived before with with a new baby. And then there's those other things as we both talk about life happens, a new home, a new job, starting a business, et cetera. As one is planning to have that baby or planning to buy a new home or perhaps starting that new business, what in your mind are the essential things that they need to be thinking about to prepare themselves financially within their written financial plan to make what kind of modifications to whatever it is that they had planned in the past?
I mean, first, when you hit those, milestones, people, they see that the wedding, the cost of the wedding, or if they're buying a house, right, the down payment, and sometimes they might say, okay, how much, the mortgage payment as well. But those are one time cost. And sometimes they don't plan what's going to happen after that, right? And if you let's say for when people getting married, for example, right, the average cost of a wedding, it's somewhere between $35,000 right now, right? And 67, 2/3 of the people who get married, they take debt. So before you take those debt as well, right? And you have to say, okay, let's take a step back, because when you're getting married, you're not just getting married. You have to, sometimes I call it a merger. Now you have to merge your finance with your spouse finance, right? And I'm here for a full disclosure. Make sure they disclose everything as well. But those monthly costs that's gonna have if you're buying, if you're planning to buy a house, right? on Sunday morning, the heat is not working or something just happened and you never planned for certain things, right? So you might think it's only the mortgage and the insurance as well, but the insurance tend to goes up. So you really need to take a step back to see what's the impact. And usually as well, if you had a caution, an emergency fund, I tend to tell people increase it a little bit because, you never have a house before, and right. So just in case something happen, at least you have a little bit more cautions to, continue living your life.
So, Eustache, let's say that I've got that cushion, and then I have to use it for either an emergency or an opportunity. How quickly should I build it back, and should I give up other goals to build back that cushion account for a short period of time until I get it back up, or should I stretch it out over a longer period of time and continue with the other goals that I'm working on?
It depends. It depends on which goals, but you need to try to build it up, as fast as you can. But it's depend on other goals because, right? Because if you have to take your child to, you have to pay child care, right? So you cannot say, okay, you're gonna sacrifice certain things so you can build up the emergency. Certain spend, you have to spend them, but try to build it because remember, it's here to stabilize you. So you might have one event now, and in 1 or 2 months you have another emergency. So now you expend it for, let's say, 6 months trying to build it up, and something happened and you did not have that emergency, right? So it's really depends on but trying to do it as fast as you can if you can. But again, life happened, it's movement, right? But that's what I would say.
So let's start with I'm going to say a younger couple first. Not that it can't be for older, but let's just go with the traditional young couple getting together. What should they be thinking about with a cushion as they enter marriage? And then on the other side of that, been married for a few years and things just didn't work out the way you thought it would. What should I be thinking about as I'm getting divorced? But let's take care of the good times first, getting married, because everybody's happy on the day they get married.
Yes, and that's a very emotional when you're getting married, right? So now you're merging your life with somebody probably you never lived with that person. And I'm here for full disclosure as well, right? What are the debt? Even sometimes I say, what are the credit score as well? Because you really need to understand what you're getting yourself into. And sometimes I tell people, a lot of things, everything has an expiration date as well, except when you're getting married. It's a contract you sign, but there's no expiration date because going through divorce is expensive. So you really need to understand the full disclosure of that person's finances as well. And also, where you're going to live. Are you going to move to the other spouse house? Or you're going to buy a house? There's a lot of things that's come up. When do you plan to have your first child? Is it in the first year? Is it in the second, third years as well? There's a lot you need to talk about, open communication with the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with as well, right? So that's the first thing as well. And it's come down as well to, who's working, who's not working, how stable is both of your job. That's where the caution come in as well. And, on the other part, unfortunately it's happened. People get divorced, and with Dusan now, now you see in the great divorce, people who's been living their lives for 30, 40 years, right? And now they're going to divorce and their finances is submerged, and now you have to live on a different budget, right? Sometimes you see one spouse is the one who's making the most money or who control the finances, and the other spouse was staying home, and now you're dividing all of those things. And if somebody hasn't worked for 40 years, right? So it's going to be a little harder for you to get back into to find a job. So how you going to divide certain things? And what I found out as well, sometimes people try to get divorced as quick as possible, right? And sometimes I tell people, you really need to take a step back because you might think 50-50 is 50-50. Sometimes it's not. Right? Because somebody has, let's say, $1 million, you're going to divide 50-50. But if $500,000 is into an IRA or 401k, the other half is into some cash, well, the person with the IRA is going to pay taxes. So that's less than half, $500,000. Or one person take the house, but you need liquidity. So before you say, okay, let's just, divide it everything the way you want to, you really need to take a step back to see, how it's going to impact your life, because you might not be able to work as well. So there's a lot of things that's going on. And during this process, again, probably you need to increase the caution, the emergency fund. That's where the liquidity comes in as well.
So I think really good advice on both sides of marriage. In the beginning, you really want to have a very frank conversation with your future spouse about those finances and what debts they're bringing to the table, et cetera. Are we gonna merge our two empires into one?
Exactly.
Are we gonna keep financially our lives separate and share common expenses? What will work best for each individual. So I think great advice about having that full disclosure on the front end. In and of itself, the discussion is a cushion. It gives you,
Exactly.
just the discussion itself is a cushion. And on the other end, the old expression, two can live cheaper than one, probably is true, because suddenly when you break up and there's two separate homes and the different incomes that you talked about, people are going to have to really figure out how they are going to redevelop that spending plan, and having that cushion available to both spouses in those difficult times is important.
Yes,
Well,
and
that
just to add one more to that, especially when you're going through divorce, and and I do see that as well, right? And not only those, emergency fund and those caution as well, you have to really, update your plan, right? Update the beneficiary of your plan, because if you divorce someone, there's a reason you divorce that person as well, right? So you really have to take your estate planning issues. Who's the beneficiary? We're titling the house that you have or certain business. You really need to take a broad, comprehensive view of how everything was integrated for the last 20, 30 years during that marriage, right? So that, because you never know what's going to happen as well, right? Once, when the divorce is finalized. And you have to do many of those things before the marriage is before the divorce is finalized, right? Because you might have to divide your 401k or your pension. So there's a lot of analysis that's need to be made as well.
Well, let's quit talking about those negative things. Let's go to the other side. What
Yes.
kind of advice do you give somebody who, let's say, has a sudden windfall because they won the lottery, or they just inherited a lot of money, or given what's going on in the world today, let's suppose they were an early employee at SpaceX, and as a result of the IPO last week, they suddenly find themselves going from a paper net worth that was much smaller, and now maybe it's 7 or even 8 digits of net worth. What kind of advice do you provide to them relative to having a cushion?
The first rule is to pause, take a break, because that's very emotional. So you really need to pause, because now you have that windfall, right? And you're very exciting, but take a pause and, try to observe what just happened. And sometimes I think people take that, let's say if it's, a lottery or something, you might need to park it somewhere safe, right? For the next probably 3, 6, it could be a year, really to observe that emotional and try to understand the tax consequences that come with it as well. And also, try to assemble the right team, right? A CPA for tax purposes, a CFP professional for a planning purposes, maybe lawyers as well to understand, and try to understand what do you want that money to do for you, right? Maybe that money gonna allow you to retire, or maybe that money is gonna, let you buy, your first home. Trying to understand what's the purpose of that money once you get it as well, right? So, I mean, that's one of the things. Just probably the first thing is pause, right? And put the money somewhere safe, for the 3 to 6 months, and trying to, understand different company and assemble a right team. That's what I would say. That's what I advise people, to take as well. And in term with Tesla or SpaceX as well, right? And, now you have to think tax component, but now probably most of your wealth is into one company as well. So now you include another risk, concentrating risk that's happened as well. And how you gonna, to make sure that if something happened to that company, how you gonna protect that wealth you just have, right? Probably diversify as well. There's many components that's come into it to turn it into some durable wealth, to that tax planning as well. But the first thing is pause, right? Before you do anything. Because you don't want to go and buy some, sometimes I say shiny toys, and then, you need to pause.
So it's interesting. Normally, when we're planning, we're thinking about a cushion being that emergency and opportunity fund that create that liquidity. But as you're pointing out here, there's lots of cushions to consider, like a pause. A pause is a cushion. It's
Yes.
just giving you time to think about what you want to do. I know a business owner happens to be a financial planner that recently sold his practice. And the first thing he did was go out and buy a Ferrari sports car. And, and obviously he's not a client, but he's a good friend. And I told him,
Yeah.
what are you thinking?
Yeah.
It's just take your time. What would you advise your client to do? You seem to be doing just the opposite.
And when you buy that new Ferrari for the first time, I can tell you the smell of a new car, it's always good in the first time, the first day. And after a while, you just, the smell is not the same anymore. It's just a burnt end
It,
sometimes, right? So,
exactly. So let's talk about a cushion at the time that somebody perhaps dies, and the people that you love, are don't have you there anymore. Uh, what what kind of decisions, documents can create a cushion, but people keep putting those off to sometime in the future?
and sometimes if I work with couples, sometimes I turn to one of them, and I ask them if you didn't come home tonight, does the other spouse knows what to do, right? And sometimes I tend to ask the spouse that, who, or probably the one who's not working. I might say, if your spouse not, do you know what to do, right? And that's a caution as well, because now you're going through an emotional, you just, lost somebody you love, and now you have to go through the process of finding out what is the password of bank or which bank they have, and all of those aspects as well. So you really, right? And if you need money, to do certain things, you need to, to have access to those things as well. And all of those are caution as well. So that's one thing that I ask people as well. And then, who's getting what as well. All of those things, that I tell people, it's come to, again, that caution part of it, right? So understand that open communication, make sure your spouse knows what's going on as well, and where they can find certain things. And usually a lot of people say they don't know because they just don't, and that's the first thing you have to do, because we all know where we've been, but we don't know how long we have on this earth, right? So it's always planned like tomorrow is your last day.
Eustache, as you know, I was on the board of directors for the CFP board, and I was the chair. You're a CFP
Yes.
ambassador, making aware to the public the importance of hiring professionals that have the CFP designation, as opposed to others that don't carry that designation. What do you think the distinction is for those of us that have a CFP designation, as opposed to those that do not, and helping people to plan and to think through the cushions we've been talking about?
Sometimes a safety professional is trained, right? So when you think of a large transition, it's really about investments questions. It's more like cash flow, taxes, insurance, benefit, retirement, estate planning. And the CFP professional, those are trained to connect those area and to look at the whole plan instead of one product as well, right? And the CFP, professional, they are fiduciary obligating to put you first, where you might find another advisor who more like on the product side, right? So you need somebody who's gonna put you first, who put you at the center, of everything. So, and anyone can just stock a product. anyone can discuss a product, but good planning, they connect the dot for you. And, and the best way, to know that person is going to put you first is this, certified financial planner professional, because, again, they are trained and they have to abide by the CFP board, fiduciary obligations to put you first.
Well, thanks. Eustache, it's been a pleasure to have you today. I want to thank you very much. New York City is lucky to have you up there to be doing some planning for the clients with whom you work. And I just want to thank you very much for being with us today. Any last words that you might have?
Yeah, where I would say, if people want to take one thing from today is a plan is something is not something you build once and you file it away. Life happen and life keep happening. Baby, promotion, loss, right? Everything. And when you just want to make sure your money or the plan itself should keep up with your life and, updating whenever something happen. That's one thing I would like somebody who's listening to the podcast to keep, to take away from. So.
Well, great advice. No question. And as they say, planning is not a one and done. It's a process, so keep at it. So now you know about all the different kinds of cushions that you need to have financially. You know about a written plan. So now go out there and up your assets.
This has been another edition of the Up Your Assets podcast, hosted by Ray Ferrara, CFP founder and executive chair of Provise Management Group, LLC. The preceding presentation was for general information purposes only and not personalized advice. Seek out a professional before making any financial decisions. Additionally, no guests pay to be on the show or are paid to be on the show. The opinions expressed are their own and not the host's or the show.